भगवान। ओम नमो हरिहंताणं, नमो सिद्धाणं, नमो आयर्याणं, नमो वज्रयां, नमो लोय सव्वसाहुनं, एषो पञ्चनमुक्कारो सौव पावपनाशनो मङ्गलानं च सौवेतिं परमं हवै मङ्गलम्। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमः शिवाय। जय Sachidanand. Welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining on time. Our today's topic of HSRC English webinar is the one which is very sensitive and it is deeply related to human life. It's my privilege to welcome and introduce our today's speaker, Miss RANI KRISHNAN from USA. She has a very rich legacy of her parents, Dr. Radha P. Krishnan, who was scientist in USA and who met and discussed with holistic scientist Dada Bhagwan. Long discussion. One book has been recently published. Ms. Rani and her mother, Lalita Krishnanji, she is a very renowned doctor. Ms. Rani Krishnan is a public health specialist with US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. She trains and mentors public health and medical officials from all over the world to prepare for and respond to health emergencies such as COVID-19, Ebola, yellow fever, and cholera. She also responds to emergencies and natural disasters domestically and internationally to protect the health and lives of global citizens. We cordially welcome you, Rani Krishnanji. And now over to you. Thank you very much. Please.
Uncle, and thank you everybody for joining today. So we are going to talk about two topics this morning. Or this evening, for those of you in India, we're going to talk about two topics, illusion and impermanence. And so for the sake of this presentation, I have split them up. And then we will also have some discussion questions in the presentation. So I also very much welcome your input and expertise as we go through this topic together. So as I mentioned, the first topic is illusion. And I chose this quote from the Bhagavad Gita, which is detach from Maya and attach to the divine. So when we talk about illusion, for the sake of this presentation, we'll also refer to it as Maya. And we'll explain sort of what we're talking about and how we want to detach from the illusion that is all around us and attach to the divine, which is the constant, which is the permanent, which is the ever-connected source that's within all of us. So the first thing we have to do is we have to define, what is illusion? So illusions can be things, it can be something that is there to maybe deceive or mislead us intellectually in our perceptions. It can be an optical illusion, so an image that is presented in a way that confuses the perceiver. It's also the perception of something that is objectively existing in such a way to cause a misinterpretation of its actual nature. So if we look at this image here, how many of you, when you look at this image, how many of you see, and you can raise your hand or speak up, an old woman? Anybody see an old woman? And how many of you see a young woman in this upon first glance? So anyone want to share what they see when they look at this image here on the right-hand side? Okay,
Yeah,
if
only
not,
man.
no. Okay, thank you, Avni.
Sure. I just see the old woman. I actually don't see the young woman. So I would like oh, actually I think I just saw it.
Yeah.
I see a woman facing the back and I see like her jawline as the nose
Yes.
as opposed to okay, I see it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. So you can either see like the face of an older woman with a scarf over her head, like Avni saw, or you can see a young woman looking towards the back here. This is her jaw, this is her ear, and her eyes and nose are not totally visible, but it gives the impression that there's a lady looking to the back. And so we're surrounded by these types of illusions in the natural world on a daily basis. In fact, everything that we perceive through our five senses um, is different from person to person. It's different from species to species. For example, when we see an image, actually, when you're looking at an image, this top graphic here, the human being is upright, but when the image is perceived and it's projected onto the retina, it's actually flipped upside down. And then that image is sends a signal is sent to our via our optic nerve to our brain center, our visual cortex. And it's actually it converts from a physical being to energy that's sent to the brain, and then the brain perceives that, oh, this is a human being. But when we see that image, we see it right side up. Same thing you see every day when you look in the mirror. You're actually seeing a what we call a lateral inversion, which means that the image is actually flipped over on its side so that your right hand is if you wave your right hand, it's actually the left hand of the mirror image. But our brain is so sharp, it perceives it like we're looking, we don't internalize that we're flipping this image every time we look into a mirror. But if you take text and you put it in front of the mirror will have it flipped in the opposite direction. So that's an illusion that all of you can experiment with, or, teach your kids that we, our very existence, is all illusions of some kind or another, because we're only seeing part of the picture. So if you look at this graph here on the bottom, what you see is that, human beings just sight wise. So the blue line here represents what the person or being can hear. Okay. And then the purple line is kind of when they communicate or when they project sound, it's the hertz, the level at which their sound is projected. So if you see here a human being, we have a limited range, but then if you have a bat or a dolphin, they're able to hear sounds that we're not, and frequencies that we're not able to hear. Elephants are able to project their sound almost as much as we can hear, whereas human beings, it's only a fraction. Your voice only carries a fraction of what you can actually hear. You can go on and on like this. If you look up at the night sky, when we see the night sky, we see, typically black sky with some dots of stars, white sparkly dots of stars. But if a human being was actually able to see, ultraviolet, all the different types of light that come from space, the night sky would be vivid shades of purple, red, yellows. It would almost be like daylight. But because we are only able to perceive a limited thing. We have the illusion that it's dark, that the night sky is dark, but in reality, it's not. It's just that our senses are limited in this world. And so that in itself tells you that you're only getting a portion of the whole picture. You're not seeing the whole picture. And so that's what we really want to reiterate here. When we rely on our senses, we're only getting, partial truth. So illusions are also all around us in nature. They can be found. So here we have 3 different images. This first one is a Dracula orchid. So when you look at this flower, you see a face. Most of you probably see a face. In nature, typically when an animal or insect sees a face, sees eyes looking at it, it's less likely to approach that object because that's a threatening pose. So many times in India, people who are living in the jungles and things, they'll wear a mask on the back of their head with eyes to ward off, predators. Because if a predator sees something looking directly at it, it's less likely to attack that being. Here you have a chameleon. Chameleons are notorious for able to change their color of their scales depending on the environment that they're in. And by changing that, they're able to then hide and, one, defend themselves from predators, but also they're able to then hunt insects by blending into the scenery. And here, I struggled with even seeing this, but how many of you can see this owl in this picture? This owl was on a tree, but it's blended in so well that if you were, a mouse or something, you wouldn't be able to notice the difference between the owl and the tree. So again, that is protection for the owl from other predators, but it also helps disguise or deceive the senses, allowing prey to have a false sense of security. And then the owl is able to hunt, to survive. So again, illusions are all around us in nature. They help animals. Animals have evolved, and these traits have evolved over time to ensure survival of their species. Another illusion that we experience on a day-to-day basis is the illusion of sunrise and sunset. So we look at the sunrise, we look at the sunset, it looks like the sun is disappearing, below the horizon. It also almost looks as if the sun, in early days, we believed very early on that the sun rotated around the earth. That was kind of the initial perception, because we would see the sun rise in the east and set in the west. And so it gave this illusion that the sun is revolving and the earth is staying stationary. But as you see here, whether it's season or day to day, the earth is what is rotating around the sun. And the angle at which it rotates depends on that predicts where the sunlight's going to hit the earth. And then it can give the perception that there is daylight or nighttime. But if you look at the earth and it's, tilted on this axis, while one part of the world is experiencing daylight, the other is experiencing nighttime, depending on what hemisphere you're in. Same goes with seasons. So the constant is that the sun is in the center, but because of the way our brain and our sight and our senses perceive things, we say, oh, the sun is, setting and the sun is rising in one direction or the other. Same thing for storms. You have a rainstorm and you see these dark, ominous clouds. People will say the sun's not out today. It's these clouds are putting a veil over the sunrise. But for any of you who have flown in a plane during a daytime storm. Once you get above the cloud line, it's completely bright and sunny. There's no dark clouds, you know, all of that is sort of what we'd say. It's a realistic illusion, but the reality is the sun is always there. It's just that the clouds are blocking that view of the sun. So these are kind of illusions that we experience in our day-to-day life that show us kind of, you know, there's more to reality than what we perceive. Now I want to talk a little bit about where holistic science really delves in more to this, because the things that the external illusions are natural. It's part of the world. It's been there since, you know, the dawn of time. And what we want to focus on is our internal perceptions that actually lead to more of an illusion that we experience in our day-to-day life. So what we mean here by internal perception is how we perceive experiences, circumstances, people, depending on things like our viewpoint. So if we have certain religious beliefs, we may come from a place of judgment that our religion is better than, and we are better than others who do not practice that religion. The same thing can go for politics. Economically, people may think, oh, I have more wealth, so I'm better than those who don't have more, you know, material wealth. These are all things that actually coat ignorance onto our real experience of this world. So holistic science, you know, the point is to notice when you have these types of internal perceptions and opinions about people, it actually distorts the experience with reality. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the upcoming slides. But the external world we perceive, for example, also is where we blame others. So let's say you didn't get a job. You interviewed for a job, but somebody else in your department was selected for that, okay? Instead of just accepting that happened because of maybe you had not had enough merit to earn that job, whether it's due to your past life, whether it's due to your current life, instead of seeing it from that viewpoint, you blame that person. Oh, you know, they must have known somebody in that department. They weren't honest in their interview. You know, we have these things that we will put on to other people. We give them the responsibility. But actually, it's our own judgments, it's our own incorrect viewpoint, and it's our own blaming of the other person that's creating this world around us. So perception starts from within and illusion starts from within. So the more you find fault, the more in this quote, if I could get a volunteer to read this quote here on the bottom, starting with nature creates.
I can read, RANI.
Thank you, Shailaji.
Jay Sachidanand. Nature creates an illusion by making somebody else responsible for one's own bad luck. But in reality, the causes are within. Illusion is so strong that man goes on fighting, hating, and ultimately hurting himself, wasting energy or spoiling health. Secrets of Holistic Living, Chapter 12.
Thank you. So I could not sum it up better than that quote that, you know, when we make others responsible for our suffering, when we hate, when we blame, when we find fault, when we want to hurt others, we are in the grip of illusion. If you are experiencing that, that's when you know that you are in the grip of illusion, that none of that is real. And it is not true to our innate nature. Oops, sorry. Okay, so under illusion, we kind of tend to forget the law of growth and decay. So every material thing on this earth, whether it's animate or inanimate, is subject to the law of growth and decay. You know, all of us, we are born, we're young, we grow older, we get maybe less healthy. Age is a natural process for any material being, whether that's living, or it could be a table, it could be a vehicle, it could be any type of object. It's going to be subject to that natural law. But when we fall into that illusion, we start to cling, we start to crave that, you know, we don't want our children to go up, we don't want to age, we don't want our circumstances to change. When we start to do that, we are being gripped by that illusion that these things are permanent. And that's actually the next part of the talk, which is impermanence. But we identify with the physical body. We obsess, you know, over things like there's a whole commercial industry on anti-aging, on, you know, how to be, you know, completely healthy. And there are people and there are companies and corporations that capitalize on this fear of, you know, people getting older, people gaining weight, those types of things. But no attention is ever paid to the eternal self, which does not die, but gets developed during repeated cycles of birth and death. So what this is saying holistically is that even birth and death are an illusion, because the self is not dying. It is just the body that is being born and aging and dying, right? But the self is eternal. And there are almost every religion alludes to some of that, whether there's belief in rebirth or not, that's different. But everything says you have an eternal spirit. In Christianity, in Islam, they talk about the eternal spirit. So like that, the biggest illusion is that, you know, birth and death are the end of our existence. We oftentimes feel attachment appears as love, but it's really attachment. When we want to control someone, when we have jealousy, when we, you know, we punish children for not meeting our expectations instead of just loving them. And I will allude to Avni's presentation on parenting and holistic parenting. When we fall into that, we are no longer connected to our true selves, which is eternal and full of love. We are now blinded by the illusion of attachment. And so that comes with expectations. Anytime we seek happiness from external sources, instead of from within us. And I know this is so hard to do in the modern age where you're inundated with advertising and social media and these types of things. But the biggest illusion is that happiness exists in those, you know, in whatever you're seeing or craving or being inundated with ads. That is not the true source of happiness, and it's certainly not the true source of permanent happiness. So Hindu scriptures refer to this grip of illusion as Maya, because this is one of the most difficult things to break. And we're all kind of, you know, subject to its effects, the effects of Maya. So the Secrets of Holistic Living also gives another excellent example in chapter 12 of religion and spirituality. So another, you know, illusion is the difference between religion and spirituality. So spiritual practice, holistic science, for example, is intended to bring us into harmony with the eternal laws of nature. It's meant to be subtle, but it's meant to be kind of all accepting, all encompassing. You know, there's not a judgment that comes with it. Whereas religions, typically every religion comes with a certain set of do's and don'ts. Some of these are created, early on in the inception of those religions, but some come much later. The do's and don'ts come much later and are what we would consider man-made. Some of these can even be politically influenced, or economically influenced. If you go back historically and study the evolution of religions, sometimes there are reasons why, these rules were put into place. And it was more for economics or survival of that society, less so about the spiritual side, which is the connectedness and the harmonies with eternal laws of nature. So the majority of people mistake religion as spiritual practice, and they believe these do's and don'ts to be the aim and the end all. Instead, they fail to miss the bigger picture, which is that we are all connected. We are all, as any living being, we are connected to each other and also to the bigger source, which is the divine. It's the consciousness that's within all of us. So true spirituality actually starts with acceptance and nonviolence. So accepting individuals and situations with equanimity and gracefully is one of the biggest spiritual practices. Seeing, as Dada Bhagwan always says, seeing everybody is correct according to their viewpoint. Okay. The viewpoint is like a wheel, and the holistic scientist is in the center. So only from the center can you see that every other viewpoint is correct from where they are, because who are we to say that, who are we, a minor human being that's on this earth? Who are we to say in the grandiose, time cycle, what is right and what is wrong? Who are we to judge that? And that's what we really have to get away from. So acceptance is really the essence of nonviolence and compassion. And it really is our true nature. But illusion blinds us. Illusion cuts off these connections. So again, acceptance is a measure of our grace, of our culture and creativity, but it can be like a muscle. You can practice this over time. The more you're aware of how you succumb to illusion, the more you're likely to step out of that and break free from that illusion. So I love the first bullet here is illusion makes the infinite finite. As we said earlier, everything is connected, and consciousness that pervades every living being on earth and other realms is the infinite. So when we blind ourselves by illusion, with attachment, with hatred, with retaliation, with judgments, we bring that finite power, we shrink to finite. We become, engrossed in that illusion. Illusion is when we see ourselves as separate from others. All circumstances are temporary, but the self is eternal. And that is the true reality that we have to get to. So if I could have any volunteer to read the two quotes at the bottom of the slide, please.
Yeah, voluntarily. Yeah, please.
Thank you.
Hi, Cher. Oh, hi, Rani. It's Meera. I'm going to read the
Thank
two.
you, Meera.
Meera.
Thank you.
No, thank you for allowing me, and thank you for this honor. If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear as it is, infinite. And this is a quote by William Blake. Would you like me to read the next one also?
Yes, please.
Maya, the cosmic magical measurer, produces the illusion of dividing a portion of the indivisible infinite into separate finite objects, even as a calm ocean becomes distorted into individual waves on its surface by the action of a storm. And I cannot see who that is written by. Cher. Sorry about that.
Thank you. No problem. That's Paramahansa Yogananda said that quote. But I felt that those quotes really summed up the negative impacts of illusion. It is something that if we think about, our energetic vibration, when we come out of that and see, we see things as separate, as finite, we see things as this religion, that belief system, that economic system, that race. We are dividing into those finite objects. We're diminishing the power of the ocean into little waves, and we're diminishing our own power. So, truly illusion is it is something you want to be aware of and come out of it. So I want to take just a moment now to poll the group and do a little discussion about what are some examples of illusion that you have experienced in your life. This can be anything from personal, physical, sensory, anything that we covered. But would anybody or a couple of people like to share just your experience on how you've experienced illusion and maybe how you recognized it and came out of it? So I'll just stop here for question.
Yes, participants, your turn to come. Your turn has come. Anybody can share. Yeah, Shaila ma'am, please.
Jai
Please.
Sachidanand, everybody. I specifically want to share something that has defined the existence of Shayla, which is becoming a mother. So the illusion of motherhood, it's a beautiful role, yet the fact that our three sons are so different has allowed me to, with Dadaji's grace and compassion and his divine knowledge, been able to see where the illusion is interwoven into those relationships and those expectations that from the womb were there, and how now that they are much older and adult men, how that's impacted them and our relationship. And thankfully, with Dadaji's Gnan, we've been able to create a pure bond. Of course, you're always working on that. It's a work in progress that you're always working on. But there is a tremendous illusion in parenthood, because from the time that you are expecting a child, you're unknowingly or knowingly building so many expectations within yourself. And I've realized that ever since I have allowed myself to quote unquote see that as a role and not who they are, our relationship has become so much more fluid and beautiful, and they feel free to express themselves exactly as they are, rather than my expectations as a mother would be upon them. So I just wanted to share that, because that's probably the biggest illusion, I think, aside from being a daughter or a wife, that has been, but it's been such a shaping part of Shayla's life, besides meeting Dadaji and attaining this wonderful knowledge and awareness that he's given us. So I just thought I'd share that. Jai Sachidanand, everybody.
Thank you, Shaila ji. Very nice, so nice.
Wow. Thank you. That was
Meera ji has raised hand.
outstanding.
Meera Ramnathan.
Go ahead, Mira. Thank you, Shaila ji.
Oh, thank you, Shaila ji. That was amazing. And I wanted to add to what she was saying. I have tried to grow plants. I've tried to grow a fruit, like, fruits, and I've tried to grow vegetables, whatever it is. And I put everything inside this. Mira has put everything inside this area in the backyard. What's really interesting is that Mira takes care of them at the same time, all the time. She waters them, she puts fertilizer, but only some grow and some die. That was the sense, that was what really brought home what Rani is explaining today about the illusion. It's not Mira that's taking care of those plants or making them grow or die. I was so I was excited that when I got some plants, some like vegetables, and I was so sad that something else like my eggplant and everything else died. But Mira has no hand in that. That's just illusion. And that brought that whole and so even looking at everything in our lives, we control nothing. And that it's just the illusion of control. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you. Thank you, Rani, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Miraji. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excellent. Would anyone else like to share? These are outstanding, really, hitting what we talked about throughout the presentations. Anyone else before we move to impermanence?
All right.
Okay. So I think both of those were just tremendous examples of how it is in our daily lives and how it is truly a powerful force. So, overcoming illusion really starts from within. We have tons of external stimulus. We've got traffic, festivals, loud and harsh sounds. All of these things, this turbulence that exists outside, and I'm talking weather patterns, war, famine, all of these things that we see on the outside and we want to blame others. Those causes started from within, and that is the most powerful thing that holistic science brings out, is that all of these noise and turbulence that we see on the outside, all the positive things we see on the outside externally, where there are peaceful communities or prosperous communities, and all of those causes start from within. And it's just a reflection. It's just a projection of, think of everybody on earth and what they think, what they desire, what they want. All of that has to be expressed. It's nature's job to provide what we desire, right? So all of those things are coming out, and we blame the world, we blame others, we blame everybody, but saying, that the real cause comes within, from not understanding that the causes of illusion are internal, and the solution is also through internal understanding. So it's, as Shaila and Mira mentioned, that, even though we're not saying don't be a parent, don't, attempt to grow a vegetable, we're not saying don't live, but awareness that this is illusion, these expectations we put on our children, when we have awareness of that, only when you are aware of the problem can you address the problem. And so, in the Secrets of Holistic Living, it says, as a result of meditation, where the inside becomes quiet and peaceful in that condition, although noise remains outside, we are not disturbed, and we interpret the noise or other, originating from the disturbed minds, and we have compassion and goodwill towards them. So this is called the coming out of illusion. And so what we want to reiterate here is that everything you observe in your world, whether it's good or bad, is a projection of either your thoughts or somebody else's, and you are a part of that. But instead of coming at it with hatred, come at it with love, compassion, and understanding. And the more you do that, the more you will come out of that. If we can also read this one quote by Dada Bhagwan, please, that really talks about illusion. If any volunteer would like to read that.
Yeah.
Sure, Rani, if I may.
Please.
Yes, please.
Vinalji.
Any action carried out in this world is an illusion, Pranti. One becomes free from illusion when he becomes aware of his real self. Param Pujya Shri Dada Bhagwan.
Thank you, Bino. That's that sums up really this slide here, which was only your awareness of your real self is going to pull you out of the grip of illusion. So we have another explanation about illusion from Dada's Aptamani. If I can get one other volunteer or even the same to read this sort of longer quote.
Yeah. Anybody voluntarily? Avniji is there. Avniji, please.
I can read it. Jai Satchidanand.
Thank you,
Yes.
Jason.
That which wanders outwardly is not a permanent entity. It is constantly changing every moment. You are the permanent one in all this. Everything else continues to change. You think it will rain, but the clouds will dissipate. These are all illusory effects. It does not mean much. You simply have to investigate what the illusion is and who is the one trapped by it, and that is all you have to check. Dada Bhagwan, Aptavani 5.
So, all of this talking, and Dada has just answered the whole problem in this little paragraph, in this little 3 sentences, has really solved the world's problems. And so I just wanted to include that quote because the key is that solution starts from within by recognizing that illusion and looking at who is trapped by this illusion. That is all you have to do to come out of it. It sounds simple, but it is way more than that, way deeper. And so just going back to this quote, so as we talk about, everything outside is not a permanent entity. And so I want to bring us to the next half of the presentation, which is about impermanence, which also very much ties into illusion. So impermanence is the state or fact of only lasting a limited period of time. And I will ask one other volunteer to please read this quote, this quote on impermanence.
Yeah, I
Sure.
can see it. Please. If you can see it
Thank
clearly.
you.
Yes. Good health is impermanent. Youth does not last. Prosperity is impermanent, and life too does not last. How can beings afflicted as they are by impermanence take delight in desirable things like these? The Sutra on Impermanence.
My God.
So thank you, Binal. This really sums up, there's a lot of things in Buddhist teachings and practice that talk about the impermanent nature of worldly life. And when we identify with those things, it's like the quote said, how can you have happiness in that when you have the constant impermanence of everything around you? So in our day-to-day life, impermanence is a part of life and nature. Every living thing that is born, it ages, and that being's body dies. Okay, just like we see every season in the United States, at least. We have, trees that all the leaves in around October, they'll change color. They'll go from this beautiful green in the spring and summer, they go to this orange and then red. And then finally by December, they're brown and they've fallen off of those trees, and that is a part of life. The fact that it's impermanent makes that beauty all the more special because we know that by December, those leaves are going to be gone. Here we have 2 kind of wheels of time that I wanted to include on this. So not only is every life and every living being subject to aging and death, But time is also cyclical. There's kind of a upswing where things go from, if we start at the top of the wheel where, you know, there's a lot of happiness that's experienced by everybody in this sort of the up cycles of time. As we go further down the wheel of time, and you come sort of to that 6 o'clock position, that very bottom position, this is almost like the exact opposite. Like there's a lot of suffering, there's a lot of misery, there's a lot of internal suffering. But all of this is also temporary, and this also over time will change and go back towards this more positive part of the cycle. And so, you know, it is not only a part of our worldly existence, but if we look at time, it is also cyclical in nature. And that's a big part of understanding the impermanence of life and daily living, that every circumstance is temporary. When we long for permanence, when we long for like a marriage that inevitably someone will die, that marriage will end. It is not something you want to go, you know, talking to everybody about on a day-to-day basis, but knowing that, recognizing when we long for that, and we long for, oh, you know, we meet some people that they don't want their kids to grow up. They don't want their kids to not be dependent on them. We run after wealth. We run after youth. This is not only we're resisting the very nature of our natural life, which is impermanence, but we're greatening that illusion, and we're getting kind of sucked more into the illusion as well. So that's the sort of intersection between impermanence and illusion. When we resist this ever-changing process, we suffer. The more we resist, the more we suffer. In a article by Psychology Today, accepting impermanence can actually help us live more flexibly. So what we want to really hammer home in this slide is that impermanence is not insignificant. So what we don't want to say is like, well, you know, this job is going to end at some point, so I'm just gonna not give it my best effort, or doesn't matter anyway, you know, the car is going to get old eventually, so I'll trash my car. It doesn't mean you drive with a blindfold on, you know, like it does not mean you treat life as disposable, you treat people as disposable. That's not what we're saying. In fact, the opposite, knowing that they're not going to be there forever, the more presence as which you approach that person or circumstances, the more rich your life actually becomes. So psychology, so the author talks about how both positive and negative experiences are impermanent. That, you know, we are always expecting and changing life of but we want a constant life of predictability. You know, many of us want to come to something and we don't want to change typically, whether it's happiness, whether it's moving to a different city, you know, we want to keep things the same. But when we do that, we're actually making our lives harder. Accepting impermanence can help us savor and appreciate the good moments while they last. And it can also help us learn from the negative experience. If we see, you know, bad experiences as a learning opportunity versus seeing it as, you know, I can't tolerate this, I need to escape from it, we actually start to live with more flexibility, but also with more joy. So every life is, you know, a series, as this image shows, of peaks and valleys, highs and lows. You know, it's often referenced in popular culture about peaks and valleys of life, but the peaks are the high moments and the valleys are the low moments. These are both bound to happen. It's how we react to them, how we stay grounded and centered and not get attached to these circumstances is how we live life more authentically, more powerfully, and in more presence. So, in scripture, in the Sanskrit definition, and also referenced in the Secrets of Holistic Living, Nitya is eternal, and Anitya is sort of the opposite of that, or impermanent, non-eternal. And anitya means it's non-repeating wave-like nature of pleasure and unpleasant experiences. So it's just a part of life. It's just good and bad. The most important interpretation of anitya is that all pleasure and unpleasantness experiences are caused by nature and have a creative purpose. So again, that goes back to sometimes things leave your realm, your daily life. Maybe it's a circumstance, maybe it's a coworker that you've had a hard time with, gets another job somewhere. So for that temporary moment, you feel some relief of like, oh, this person is gone. But then another person comes in and maybe they're even more problematic than the first person to work with, So by clinging to those things and not just seeing things as flowing, we kind of miss out on the bigger purpose. When we become attached to an outcome or an experience, the attachment is one of the principal causes of misery and suffering. So in this quote here by Alan Watts, the only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, is to move with it and to join the dance. So Alan Watts was a philosopher, a British philosopher, very well versed in a lot of Eastern philosophies, Hinduism, Buddhism, and he wrote a book called The Wisdom of Insecurity. And what he talks about is when you understand that nothing is permanent, that every moment is changing, the more you embrace that wisdom, the more you live life in the present moment and the more joy you actually experience. But our whole world and this illusion is set up to do the exact opposite. It's to prevent us from experiencing sometimes joy, sometimes pain, anxiety, when we worry, when we have anxiety. All of this is because we are not rooted in the fact that things in this world are impermanent. And so if I will share that book on the WhatsApp chat, but it's very great book that talks about the wisdom of insecurity and the wisdom of knowing all things are impermanent. Another meaning of impermanence is that happiness and misery, pleasure or pain, favorable or unfavorable situations are in a state of flux. They're dynamic in nature. If you study quantum physics and you look at the atomic particles and you look at quantum physics, which looks at quarks, everything on the invisible plane on the physical earth is in a state of movement. Whether it's at the atomic level, whether it's at the physical level, everything is changing. So even objects that appear still, they're actually in movement. But again, because of illusion, because of our perception, we cannot see that. And so we cling. Pleasant experiences changes into an unpleasant one at the end of its time cycle, and unpleasant changes back in a similar way to pleasant. So, everything is, again, cyclical, forever moving. And the more we root ourselves in that knowledge, the more joy we experience. One more interpretation of anitya is that everything in nature, outside and inside, is in a constant state of flux. supported by vibratory motion throughout eternity. This state of flux generates infinite number of patterns, of behaviors, of moods, of sensations, relationships, experiences, etc. Each one distinctly different from its predecessor. And, you know, that in itself is just miraculous to even be, you know, discussing with all of you today. And so the bigger picture, if we start to see the bigger picture holistically, that everything is in flux, we will ourselves become more centered and grounded. Can somebody read the quote here by Eckhart Tolle, please, on the right-hand side?
I can read it.
Please,
Thank
Some,
you.
absolutely. Some changes look negative on the surface, but you will soon realize that space is being created in your life for something new to emerge.
Wow, excellent.
Yes. So going back to our perception, our, you know, sensory, we don't know. Nature is always helping us in different ways, right? So as Avni read this quote, what comes to mind for me is sometimes, you know, things look on the surface like, oh, that's such a bad experience, or if this didn't happen, my life would be, you know, better because of it. But really, that experience may have helped you grow and develop in a way that you never could have imagined. So what this quote is saying is, don't judge the circumstances as looking at what's on the surface level, because that's a limited viewpoint. It's a limited perception. When you really embrace life with presence, this wisdom will start to develop in you that, you know, oh, maybe that this didn't happen because actually something was protecting me from, you know, there have been so many stories of people who have missed their flights. They forgot something, they went back, they missed their flight, and that flight, you know, that plane was in an it was in a crash, you know, and you've read tons of stories of this where something felt like the person was being called back to the house. It seemed negative at the time that they were missing their flight, but in the end, that actual space that was created saved their life. And so, you know, that's the sort of point of the understanding of impermanence. By remaining neutral and observing sensations during meditation, looking at these mixed patterns of experiences in our actual life, it is possible to understand the purpose of nature. It's possible that but not in the way that you might think. It's really showing us our own internal cravings, our aversions, our kind of faults, our inner faults, that remember are creating that illusion of the world around us too. So the more we sort of spend time introspecting and understanding the concept of impermanence, it leads to freedom from craving and aversion, and establishes human beings into a spiritual center line, which is the essence of existence. And this is alternately known as love. So it can actually physically change these negatives into positives, but the key is we have to turn our focus inwards instead of blaming what's happening on the outside. When we're in this neutral state of observation and introspection, we are connected to our soul, which is eternal. Internal and external suffering decrease, and we begin to realize that these things that are happening are a result of our illusion that we're doing it or somebody else is doing it. We are more present, and we experience peace and joy from within when we start to go inward and look at all of the things that are causing us suffering. So I love this quote from C.S. Lewis. The present is the point at which time touches eternity. So even with what Dr. Alan Watts was saying, even in this quote, and even what Eckhart Tolle and Dada Bhagwan, the holistic scientist, always says is that, you know, the past is done, the past is gone, the future is unknown, but the present is a gift. It's a gift from nature. It's the only thing that we have that is certain and permanent, is that present moment where we can connect to our true, eternal, and divine power within. And so that is kind of the true importance, is that the more you understand impermanence, the more your illusions will start to fade, and the more you'll be connected to as an eternity. Time touches eternity and the divine. So we're going to come kind of to our next discussion question, which is, you know, all of us live in an ever-changing world. How do you stay calm and grounded amongst ever-changing world? And what are some of the strategies you use in your daily life to address impermanence? And I will open it up to the group. Anyone like to share their experience?
Participants, it is now your turn to speak. Please open up. You can share your own experiences here. How do you
Jason,
stay calm? Yeah, please.
Yes, we are living in a very, very rapidly moving and changing world, and there are extremely disturbing events that can quickly take us out of our center and our calm. I think one of the best ways that has worked for me is giving myself permission to pause, taking a few minutes, whether it's, you know, reciting one of Kaviraj's hymns within me internally, or just engaging in Siddha Stuti for a few minutes. It's amazing how powerful those tools can be in the midst of your daily life, and no matter what turmoil or happenings might be around you. And the strategies that I utilize are, I mean, I met Dada Bhagwan when I was very young. So the tools that are utilized are by default Dadaji's. So, but they work. I happen to be a creative person that loves to sing. So I've noticed song is something that connects us to our heart. So if I notice the energy level is very heavy and low, you know, just do a quick prayer to Dada and belt out a couple of buds, and immediately I can feel the paramanus, the energy level in the body changing. It's phenomenal. The power of these tools that we've been given. But yes, and if, you know, throughout the day, I'll make it a point to take a break for 4 minutes, 5 times a day when I'm at work, and just do whatever calls to me. It doesn't have to be work related. A lot of times it's reading some sutras or listening to a bud or whatever that may be. But that's, you know, quote unquote, inner world time. And it can make a tremendous impact. 4 minutes of our lives can change our responses and our outcomes. So I just wanted to share that, Jay Satchidanand.
Very nice.
Thank
you very
you.
much.
That was amazing.
Anybody else? I have one strategy. Every day I keep quiet. I keep mauna of 2 or 3 hours. And that helped me really a lot. Because during this time, whoever tries to what you call tempt me or to make me lose my temper, and it's a rule. No means no. I should keep quiet. So that saved me from so many troubles. By the time I open my mouth, situations are all changed. Thank you very much. Yes,
Thank
anybody?
you so much. Anybody else like to share? And every tool that was mentioned is a holistic tool. So all of these webinars, you know, every single one is a tool, the strategy that you can use to bring yourself back into that, as Shailaji and Uncle were saying, the internal world, you know, the power of the sacred pause, as they call it, the power of silence. We have so much of that inside of us, but if we're externally focused, you're always just going to feel like you're, you know, drowning. And so taking that time to come back to that internal calm that's within us is the most effective strategy. And of course, holistic science, it has all the answers for all of this. So finally, in summary, just want to go over a few key points that only through illusion, you know, one finds either situations or people responsible for our difficulties. So if we're playing the blame game, that means that we are not, we are succumbing to illusion. The illusion of attachment, it blinds us from the impermanent nature of the world, and suffering, therefore, ensues. Our true nature is to operate from the is separate, from the illusion and impermanence of the world. Only through introspection can we increase our awareness of illusion and impermanence. So taking that quiet time, taking that time to reflect, meditation, PUDs, whatever speaks to your heart is really going to help break through this. And our eternal world is shaped by our inner world. So devoting time to these strategies, whether it's maunam, meditation, introspection, it's going to lead to more joy, peace, and mitigate suffering. Because remember that outer world is a reflection of our internal world.
Definitely.
And of course, living in the present moment with awareness, it gives us freedom from illusion and impermanence. And so that is the summary of today's presentation. And I just want to include the references here, which was Secrets of Holistic Living, Dialogues with Dadaji, and Atharani 5. And thank you so much for your time, for your participation, for all the readers of the quotes, and for everyone who shared in the discussion. I want to thank you. And now we open it up for comments.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raniji. Thanks a lot. You revealed today in this session the secrets of happy and blissful living. I hope so many illusions have been removed in this session. So, may I ask participants if they have any query or would they like to share something? Our next session will be acceptance by Miss Sheila Mulji ma'am, and it will be on 20 July 2024. So let me invite respected Sri Lalabhai Patel sir to conclude this session now with his concluding remarks. Lala sir.
Thank you, Rani. It was a nice presentation and you made very good research and combination of so many sources. And these two things generally I found when I read this for the first time. And we all are subject to both the things. And proper understanding solves so many of our issues. Because these two things are a fact of life. And they are the part of Mother Nature's scheme, right? If we ignore it, if we overlook it, we do it at our own peril. We put ourselves in difficulties. Today, Chandrakant read one thing.
Yeah.
Some war general. He was asked about our relations with our neighbor country, right? Say India and China. Somebody asked him, what do you think? He said, there are 4 factors. It is my perception of them. One, their perception of me.
Right.
Then my perception of their perception. And their perception of my perception. Okay. So there are 4 dimensions, right? And as Rani explained in session, and everything is dynamic again. So number of permutations and combinations, and it creates lot of illusions. And we take so many steps. Say whatever steps we take, it is based upon our perception of the threat or whatever comes. No, it may not be true also. And if we see in retrospect, you will find that many of our worries, for example, worry is a common thing, Rani. Everybody has this. As Bhagavan used to say that nobody will buy your worries because he has enough stock.
Universal it is.
You go and when we try to share our worries, you will find that he has enough of stock of worries. He won't buy your worries. No, he will try to sell his worries to you instead. So life is like that, and these 2 aspects solves many miseries. Even it dilutes our egos, pacify it. And second important thing which I was personally benefited is about the noise concept, explained here in this presentation, that outside noise. So anybody who is making noise, there is noise inside him. That is why he is making noise outside. Right? And now we are disturbed with it. And that our response to that noise, that can be handled by us very well. If we understand that the fellow making noise is already disturbed, we have to have a compassion for him rather than having say, hating him. So that helped me a lot, I tell you. Right? Then you can continue with your own thing. And things, despite all these things going on above in the around, okay, traffic, this, that, you continue with your peace of mind. So this was very good concept. And personally, I was benefited when I read it for the first time about this noise, etc. And the world is continuously, impermanence means the world is continuously changing. And that is for our benefit. And one more thing, Chandrakant, it occurred to me is about the cardiogram. All of us have seen cardiogram. It has
Yeah.
ups and downs.
Right.
If it comes a straight line, what does it mean?
No more.
No more. So that is why the outside temperature, outside these moods, your mood, people's mood, everything keeps on changing, and that keeps you alive. Otherwise, it is like a straight line cardiogram, right? It has its own benefits because it continuously enlivens us, right? So this is what I would like to share. And these 2 things really helpful. Everybody can try, right? That these 2 things, the effects of life, the earlier we understand, the earlier we'll be lesser unhappy. Okay. So reducing unhappiness is also a kind of good thing, no? So then thereafter that unhappiness is reduced gradually, and thereafter the happiness springs up. No?
Mhm.
So both ways, this helps us a lot. Thank you, Rani, for doing very good thing. And
Totally.
thank you,
Thank you.
Chandrakant.
Thank you very much.
You have invited so many scholars today.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thank everyone
I hope they
for
have enjoyed.
connecting
Yeah.
HSRC. I think they are your friends at the Akhil Bharati Darshan Parishad. Some are there.
Yeah.
No? So
Yeah.
thank you, sirs. Nobody you have not participated in the discussions, otherwise you would have been more benefited. Yeah, right? So please join us. Chandrakant will be informing you as and when there is such a webinar.
Thank you,
Thank you
Lala
very
sir.
much.
And let me thank
Yeah.
today's speaker, Rani ji. Thanks a lot for this
Jason.
amazing, influential presentation. And we were live on YouTube, so this session, as always, is preserved. And those who could not come, those who missed this, we can share the YouTube link to them. Do come back again after a fortnight with new session, and that will be the last session of English webinar. But one, I think, but one. In the last session, all our faculties, all our associates will be there. So Shaila Mulji will be taking that session, and it will be on another secret of holistic living, that is acceptance. Thank you, Rani ji. Have a very pleasant day ahead. Thank you, participants. Thank you, Sheetal ji, Shaila ma'am, Satyendra ji, Dr. Suhas Tiwarikar, Dr. Ramla Sharma ji, Nimesh and Vinal ma'am, Lalita Krishnan ma'am. Thank you very much and have blessed time.